Earlier this month, Governor Greg Abbott took questions from people around Texas in a town hall event brought to you exclusively here on KFDX. The conversation started with the deadly shooting in El Paso. Governor Abbott says though he doesn't expect to call a special session to focus on guns, there are other actions state leaders can take. Wes Rappaport has a wrap-up.
First time in the history of the state of Texas, a governor has used constitutional authority to create a task force dealing with domestic terrorism.
After talking about gun violence for nearly 15 minutes, the conversation shifted to legislative priorities from this year.
This last legislative session, what did you and the other lawmakers do to lower our property taxes?
Well, thank you for the question, but I understand your pain. We use more than $5 billion to reduce your property tax rates. On average, across the state of Texas, that will be about a 7% reduction in the first year, with an increased reduction in the second year.
An audience member pressed him on immigration and spending state dollars on border security.
Congress needs to better fund Border Patrol. That will help secure the border. But in the meantime, Texas will do everything we can to step up and do our part to secure the border. Understanding this last point, which is hugely important. In Texas, we fully embrace legal immigration. Our job is focused on preventing illegal immigration.
As for the future of the Republican Party, Abbott said he does not see Texas turning any color but red anytime soon. Congressman Joaquin Castro provided a Democratic response to the discussion.
When it comes to keeping people safe, I didn't hear many solutions. He's got to call the legislature into session to pass universal background checks, to pass red flag laws, to address issues of mental health.
And to give more insight on what state leaders plan to do following the El Paso shooting, State Senator Pat Fallon joins us. Good to see you again, Senator.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
You are a gun rights advocate, as are many Texans and many Americans. Nobody wants to lose their constitutional rights, but at the same time, no one wants to see another mass shooting. So where's the balance?
Well, the tragedy in El Paso really, I think it brings us together as Texans, because when you have that kind of horrific loss of life, we've lost brothers and sisters, fellow Texans, and nobody wants a mass shooting. And ironically, we've never been safer as a general whole. I mean, the murder rate's down considerably. It's almost halved from what it was 20 and 30 years ago. Most people don't know that, by the way. They think it's never been more dangerous. But these high-profile shootings cause a lot of people to be concerned about their security and their safety. So we already have a lot of laws on the books that protect us. We don't want firearms in dangerous people's hands. Firearms in law-abiding citizens' hands actually make all of us safer. So we want real solutions, just not politically expedient ones. And that's why I like Governor Abbott's approach, where he's formed a task force. After the Santa Fe shooting, he did the same thing. He had a task force. They went around the state. They talked to a lot of concerned and smart Texans. And then we went back into the legislative session and passed some real substantive reforms where our goal was that students in Texas schools would be the safest in the country. And we took a comprehensive approach, and that's what the governor's been doing after El Paso, is let's form a task force. Let's look about why are these things happening? And I think a lot of the young people they feel disaffected. Certainly these shooters. So something very interesting, YouGov came out with a survey. 22% of millennials report having 0 friends. That's internet, that's the social media, texting. They're not having real interaction, real human interaction. And if you feel that isolated, it's a dangerous cocktail. Obviously, not everybody that's feeling that isolated is a shooter or going to harm someone else. But it's interesting that all of the shooters are disaffected loners.
So do you think you're saying the governor's task force is enough, or is it a good step?
I think it's a great first step. And then from that task force, you get ideas to take action. And that's not, again, it's not politically expedient, because real solutions take time. I want to keep us safer. And we can take action, but if it's not going to make us substantively safer, what have we done? It actually might even create for a more dangerous situation. The last thing we want to do is take firearms away from law-abiding citizens. We have a constitutional Second Amendment right to defend ourselves anyway, number one. And there's already something like 300 million firearms out there anyhow. Any law that's passed by definition, will be ignored by criminals. They break the law. They don't follow the law, but law-abiding citizens would. So we need that delicate balance, and we need to work together on it. I don't need political capital out of a tragedy. And some people try to get that, and it's unfortunate.
But don't you think there are some guns out there that are not meant for average people like you and I to be able to be used?
Well, I'm a proud owner of an assault rifle, an AR-15, and it's never hurt a soul because I'm a responsible gun owner. And, you know, listen, the line has been drawn a long time ago. You can't own a bazooka, right? You know, you can't buy grenades. But the most, overwhelmingly, the number of shootings in this country are done with handguns. It's not even close. Rifles just account for a very small number of murders. And again, the murder rate has gone down. In the 1980s, it was something like almost 30,000 murders a year, and now I think the last report I saw was maybe 2017 or so, it was about 17,000. So it's almost halved. That's the good news. Well, okay, one murder's too many.
Right.
But we're becoming safer, but we're not safe yet, and that's really what the goal is.
Backing up to Governor Abbott, he made white supremacy a priority for DPS. How would you like to see that taken care of?
You know what pulls those triggers? Evil. Evil doesn't have a color. Evil doesn't have an ethnicity. And that's what we really have to focus on. And there's extremism in, you know, every walk of life. There are some folks that are extreme. And we need to combat and watch all extremism, wherever it comes from. Whether it's, you know, the murders in California done with a knife, whether it's from, whether it's foreign or domestic. Timothy McVeigh didn't use a gun and he killed 168 Americans. He was an extremist. We have to watch folks like him before they act. So I think that is, again, another step in the right direction to watch and monitor everything. I don't, again, want to be political here, but evil does not have a color.
But at the same time, they can't watch everything, as we found out. In the wake of these shootings, though, we've heard about red flag laws, we've heard about legislation. Do you think red flag laws would have stopped the El Paso shooter? I don't.
And from what I understand, it wouldn't have, because, and you know, if I'm wrong, people can certainly weigh in, but he didn't have a history of mental illness, and there was no red flags there to really see beforehand. Again, we have another young, disaffected loner who had rage and acted out and took 22 of our brothers and sisters from us. So there's already laws on the books here. But again, you have to balance the right to a firearm, and if somebody has no history whatsoever, you can pass all the laws that you want. I mean, some of the most dangerous parts of our country are ones that have the strictest and tightest gun control laws.
We know some say yes, others say no when it comes to President Trump's possibility or not behind these mass shootings. Would you agree, though, that he could perhaps tone down his rhetoric when it comes to things like this?
I'm glad you asked that question. It is, when there were mass shootings under President Obama's watch, not one of them was his fault. There were, I believe, 5 police officers that were killed at a Black Lives rally. It wasn't his fault. He didn't pull the trigger. It was the fault of the man behind the trigger and the gun. None of these are President Trump's fault either. To lay the blame at President Trump or President Obama or whoever's in the White House at that time is really absurd, and it's completely patently unfair. We are in this together. We have 330 million people in this country. We have the most diverse population in the world, particularly for a major country, and that's our strength. And I'd like to hear any political leaders talk about the fact that success and greatness comes in all shapes, sizes, and shades. And you know, our motto is E pluribus unum, from many one. And that's what we need to all focus more on.
2 last questions, completely different topic. Do you still support Speaker Bonin?
Well, I am in the Texas Senate, and that's a Texas House. Obviously, you know, Dennis and I are very, very good friends, and I want the Republican Party to come out of this stronger than we were when it all occurred. And that's going to be for our great House members, James Frank here in Wichita Falls, and others that we work so well together. And I'm going to say this, because I like to be candid and frank, and I made you that promise during the campaigns, okay? We have such a better situation now with Governor Abbott, Dan Patrick, and Dennis Bonin, because the 3 of them worked so well together. They're the big 3. They really are. And they had breakfast every Wednesday morning. They worked out their differences, because they're going to have different priorities. They're high-powered folks. And Texans were better for that. That didn't happen for the last 10 years. And the only variable was different speaker. So there was a lot of success. And you can see the proof was in the pudding with the way the legislative session had ended. So we had this wildly successful session. That's what you sent us down there to do for 140 days. And then this political issue, it's just a political issue, occurred. And it's unfortunate, but I'm praying for my brothers and sisters in the House to get through it, and for Texas Republicans and the conservative agenda to become stronger. And when people ask me that, it is a very convenient thing to say, it's good to be in the Senate.
well, can I ask you, though, would
Sure.
you support the pro tem Moody if Speaker Bonham leaves?
Okay, so the way, if that were to happen, which I don't think we're anywhere near that situation now, I believe, because again, I'm a senator, this is a better question for James Frank, but I believe that the Speaker pro tem serves at the Speaker's pleasure. So he could simply name a new Speaker pro tem, because he would be, for those that don't know, he's the second in command. And then if the Speaker were to step down, then the Speaker pro tem would take on the mantle and become Speaker. So if that, and we're nowhere near that, just want to make that clear, but that could be a process for this or some other issue in the future. And then you could name a Republican Speaker and they would take over.
Certainly familiar with how all that process works. Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of one of those things like Nixon and Agnew and Ford and all that, but I don't think we're anywhere close to that now. And again, listen, you've elected me, 1 million people elected me to serve in the Senate. 170,000 or so elect every one of those House members, and there's 150 of them, and there are 83 Republicans. So they're getting together, they're working through it, because this is largely an intramural fight, with the Republicans, and they're all friends of mine. I got friends on all sides of this situation. So I'm really, when they call me and they ask for counsel, I just say, work it out together and let's move forward, because this isn't about you or me or the other 180 legislators. This is not about 181 of us. It's about 30 million Texans.
Senator Fallon,
Thank you,
so much.
brother.
Yep.
All right, cheers.